Hello and welcome to the first episode of my podcast. My name is Abigail Can, or you can call me Teacher Abby. This summer at summer camp and at the after-school program that I worked at, I was known as Teacher Abby, and that always holds a special place in my heart, especially as I'm working to become an educator, an English teacher for middle school and high school. So, hi, I'm Teacher Abby. Today I'm going to be walking you through my K through 12 project assignment, so the assignment part of the project, and it's kind of a projected lesson plan and overview of an assignment that I would use in my future career as a teacher. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. So I designed this project with the idea in mind that 9th grade is a huge turning point for many students. It's a lot of students' first time learning how to take notes and learning how to think critically and reading some difficult text and things that are just different than what they might have been used to in middle school. So I wanted to keep that in mind when I created this assignment, which is a reading journal. So the reading journal assignment is a physical notebook that students use to keep track of their reading assignments by taking notes from each chapter or chapters, depending on what was assigned for that day or that class period of the assigned reading. And the purpose of having students complete this assignment isn't just to give them busy work or to have something aesthetic to keep, like, oh, we have a class journal. The journals would be taken home and used kind of like a homework assignment, but more of like an aid as they're reading. I know that for me, when I would have assigned readings, especially at the beginning of my time in high school, I would struggle to remember what each chapter was about. So by having this notebook, they would be able to have a collection of thoughts by the end of the semester. And that brings me to the learning objectives for this assignment. So learning objective number 1 is students will be able to learn how to think critically. Number 2 is students will learn how to take notes. And number 3, students will learn how to look back on and understand their notes. This kind of ties in critical thinking and note-taking skill all together in the third one. So we're going to talk more about those learning objectives here in a minute. But I also want to mention that my intention for these reading notes is that students will be able to use them when taking quizzes, tests, completing assignments, or working on projects. So I think that when it comes to intent and purpose for students, a lot of people in general just won't want to do something if there's no motive to do it. So it's important that students will do these notes and take the notes as they're reading for their own good, rather than just to satisfy the teacher or to satisfy the assignment. So for every test or quiz, students will be able to use their notebooks, which should motivate them to actually write down important thoughts and ideas. Now, I know that as a teacher, this could leave room for cheating or having notes prepared in advance that are specific to questions if they somehow knew what the questions were going to be. But I think a way that I could combat this is by doing grading of the notes right before a test or a quiz and having them hand in their notebooks. Every week they would be graded. We'll talk about grading in the next episode about the K through 12 project rubric. But I think that being able to check in with students and having their notes, knowing what's in their notebooks, and then giving them back before the day of the quiz or the test would help to avoid that possible problem. So let's get into the 3 learning objectives for this assignment. The first one is critical thinking. So critical thinking is looking deeper into something rather than just the surface level. A lot of times students will just read words on a page and not understand what they mean. So the objective for students to think critically is something that would be reflected in their notes and possibly even their grades on assignments, tests, or quizzes. One of the ways that the reading journal would help students think critically, especially for this age group, is looking for what to write down, knowing why it's important, and then understanding what each chapter was about, actually cognitively reflecting after reading a chapter and writing a summary. So the summary is the big part of this assignment, I want students to write down notes, write down character names, write down interactions that may have happened, but at the bare minimum, I want them to have a summary and something to look back on when they're thinking about what happened in chapter 3 of The Outsiders. Oh, I wrote a quick summary. This is actually also proven to help students understand when they have to write something in their own words or to think about something scaled way down in 2 or 3 sentences. So I purposefully want this to be short, handwritten, and just as summarized as possible because it helps students when they have to come up with something on their own, when they can't use plagiarism, when they can't just copy off of what the back of the book says. It's more about each chapter, remembering what each chapter is about, and knowing how to think critically about that. All right, so then the second learning objective is students will be able to take notes. Now, this one might seem really obvious for us as third-year college students who are going on to be teachers, but I remember when I was in my freshman year of high school, I had a science teacher who we took notes as a class, and she had her notes that she was actively writing. So she would write them each period new. She would write them in front of us, and that really helped me to realize what was expected of me in my notes, not just in that class, not just in 9th grade, but also in the future. And I still think about that and how she did that. It also makes me wonder, why did she do that in her class if her class was about science? But I always think about how those notes were taken. I think that possibly one of her learning objectives in that 9th grade science class was to teach students how to take good notes. And it definitely did help me, and it still impacts how I take notes today. So that's a big reason I wanted to have how to take notes as a learning objective for this project. This could include labeling their notes with the chapter number, the chapter title, including page numbers and quotes so that they have something to jog their memory if there's a quote or something that happened that they might want to quote later whenever they're writing an assignment, writing a paper, or even answering questions on a quiz. Something that can help jog their memory to say, I remember writing this down somewhere. I remember the interaction between Ponyboy and Cherry. I remember these interactions, and I think it was somewhere in these chapters, so that they would be able to just go through and look. This also leads me to my next learning objective, how to understand their notes when they go back to look at them. So if they're on a quiz thinking about Ponyboy and Cherry talking, and they're like, where the heck did this happen? It can be helpful if students annotate their notes, label their notes, like I said, putting in a chapter number, a chapter title, and when they did it. So quizzes with these notes will not be given within a span longer than a marking period. So I really won't be expecting students to go back on notes from the first week of class when they're taking a final. I don't think this would be something that would be a good indicator on a final exam. But I want students to be able to go back through, look at their notes, and a big part of that too is studying. So I want students to go through their notes whenever they're studying for a quiz and highlight some key points of each chapter. The summaries are really helpful for this because they will have a specific section titled Summary with 3, 4, 5 sentences of what happened, what characters were involved, and maybe some big ideas. So being able to go back through their notes, understand why they wrote what they did, understand what they were thinking when they wrote them, and when they were reading that section of the chapter is very vital when it comes to the future of these students. Like I said, the note-taking in my one science class has influenced the way I take notes now and the way I look back on them. So I think that's a very important learning objective to hit for this assignment. In conclusion, I think that the reading journal assignment is a good way for students to compile what they've learned throughout the marking period, to think about each of the books that they've read and have summaries from each and every chapter would really help just to solidify what they remember learning, what they know they've learned, and how they write that down is going to help them to remember even better. It will help develop their critical thinking, note-taking, and then how to go back through those notes. And I think that having their notes as a resource for quizzes and tests and projects will really help motivate them to complete these assignments and prepare them for future classes, which is a key developmental change for students when they're in 9th grade. So up next, in our next episode, we're going to be talking about the rubric for this assignment and really what we're looking for, what I'm looking for from students, and how I would be grading this assignment. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.